This is Doug Vansler again. I'm at the corner of Towanda and Fort Jesse. I've made this video or similar video before. I'm making it anew in order for council to consider the plight of this sidewalk. As in many places where it's dry right now, it hasn't rained in a while. The drainage is not good, there's mud. Also, the width of the sidewalk is very poor as far as being able to handle traffic. The fences have been built up right against the sidewalk in many places. Probably, I would guess, as we walk here we'll find out, but you can judge for yourself. Probably 50% of the fences have been built right up against the sidewalk. Here you can see one with about a foot offset, and then there's one just right up against it, making that, whatever that is, 4 foot, much narrower than that, because you can't ride close to that fence, especially with the irregularities. You see one here where it's already bumped out from whatever reason from the other side, or the growth that's coming through in many cases. In this case, at least it's close to head high. I have to duck a little bit, but not too bad. But the sidewalk itself has problems with drainage. We're coming up on another one, which is always bad. When it's dry like this, it doesn't look nearly as bad, but it's mud covered in places. That right here, almost completely across, 75%, 90% across. And when it's wet, almost impassable. And again, the fence is right up against it. We got, let me look down here, sorry. This particular spot, completely mud covered, dry in this case. Hadn't rained in a while. I don't know what needs to be done budgetary wise, or when you're considering Fort Jesse and this sidewalk, but stretches of this need attention. Wherever this fencing is right up against it, again, you just cannot ride your bike if you're coming the other way. I'm walking on the other side, but if you're even walking on this side, it's almost impossible because the fence is so close. Riding your bikes is really impossible because you risk running into that, so you have to ride nearly in the middle of the sidewalk just to avoid that. And in places like this where the growth and the fence are right on the line, you can't avoid but walking all the way on the other side, sometimes even off the sidewalk. Needs to be, every one of you council persons should come down here and walk. It's a few-mile walk that I'm taking today, and when you're considering your budget this fall, and I understand at least this stretch has been a part of the plan for a year or two, I don't know how many, maybe more. It has been rejected, or at least it hasn't made the cut with the money that you have. I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure what was more expensive or more important. Obviously, you know, through my past, I have brought up several dollars that have been spent, in my opinion, unwisely. The $500,000 on Beach Street is one of those. I don't know how much this stretch of sidewalk would take to improve or to widen or change so that the grading is good, but at least part of it needs attention. One thing I'm not sure of is the legality of these fences. Now, if you move the sidewalk, will these people then have the chance to move those fences and put them right up against the property or the sidewalk again, that is one thing that probably ought to be looked into. I'd assume, as I know most property lines and most fences, there is supposed to be a boundary from, or a width off of your property line. I don't personally have a fence, but I know most of my neighbors have done that. I wonder why all of, well, I don't know about all, a vast majority of those fences that are put up along here are either right on the sidewalk or very near, making it, especially with the growth that they have, some of them have, they are into the sidewalk in many cases. Again, as I do walk this way quite a bit. I do ride my bike quite a way, this way quite a bit. There is no real viable option on the road, as it is quite busy, to ride your bike. I suppose you could. I have on occasion when the mud's been really bad, but depending on the time of day, it's quite busy and makes it quite difficult to even think about riding out there with all the traffic and the amount of curves that this road takes. It makes it even more dangerous to ride on the road itself. If the sidewalk was in good condition, wouldn't have to worry about that. Here we're coming up on another spot where the fencing is well back, probably two, maybe 3 foot back, but the overgrowth, the things that are growing near the fence, have not been maintained. And again, I don't know if that's owner, if that's town, or town working with the owner. Things ought to be so that we could travel through there without having to be hindered. Here's a beautiful spot. This guy looks to be following all the rules. He's even cut a little bit of the a little gutter along the right edge, you notice, where it drains. I assume there must have been problems at one point, and this owner took it in his own to make changes there so that it would be more accessible for him, more attractive for sure. That it would be the way it would, I would hope it would look most of the ways. This stretch here is relatively good shape for quite a while, you can see, except for the fencing right up against the property line, within a few inches, and just a few vines, rogue trees, I don't know, things that came up that the owner or the city, whoever's supposed to be maintaining that, hasn't fixed yet or torn down yet, making it difficult. If you're trying to walk from this side, you're going to rub up against definitely this kind of chain link fence, hard to ride your bike close to. You barely get into that with a handlebar, you will take a tumble. Here's a spot that was worked on. Thank you for these 2 spots. Thank you for those that did work on those. I pointed those were very crumbly because of the cable boxes that were underneath, or where cable had been run underneath there a while ago, and those were completely crumbled. Again, we have another good stretch of continued fence just right on top of the sidewalk, and then vine growth making it nearly impossible to ride your bike on that side. Impossible to walk against unless you want to brush up against vines. This is one spot that I've always wondered. I know people have shoved this tree branch back into the property owner's fence and it comes out. I'm not sure, they're probably pushing it back out, but who's supposed to trim that? Is that the property owners? It's actually hanging into the city's property. if this was my home and another person's property and I owned this area, because that branch is hanging on my property, I would be able to, I don't know if it'd be responsible for, but I would be able to trim that. And I think the town should do that. I think the property laws would almost certainly allow you to do that. It'd be a good idea to do that. There is one thing that I did want to bring up. I know you have people that mow this particular boulevard and many others on a routine basis. Do those guys ever report back to you issues? Do they ever, not you, the council directly, but Public Works, and say, hey, we've got a little cave-in, we've got a flooding problem, especially if they're mowing right after a rain, or we've got branch problems that we're, even when we're riding under some of those branches back there. And here's some that your mowers have mowed over. That's hard on blades, if you didn't know. Ask them how many blades they go through a year. Public Works probably could cut down the number of sharpenings or blade replacements if they were to not do that. Several areas like this too. This is not sidewalk related, but you've got trucks that can't make the corner here, or don't properly make the corner. I guess they probably have room except for the width of the street, but driving over the boulevard, or the boulevard, in order to make the corner. Here we're just crossing Blair Street, and this part is probably the worst section, one that I've reported on before as well, one that probably is number one on my list. I don't know how you section these off, but this fence, as it goes down here, is every bit of it. I don't know, that there may be a couple sections, very short sections, but every bit of it is within a few inches of the sidewalk or right on the sidewalk. Very strewn with limbs, not picked up. Dirt on the sidewalk near this. This was actually cleaned up earlier too. In the spring they did clean this up, but because of drainage, because of the way that it's graded, it's not working, because the mud's coming back again. Good news is, I guess, they're piling up some sticks. Nobody's coming to pick them up. Pretty close to a grate. Hopefully they don't wash in there with everything else if we do have a big rain. More sticks, more drainage problems for, well, at one time this spring, this was cleaned up, did look good. The mud was taken off of it for the most part. Here, I'll show you this bike ride if you just want to buy me. Almost riding on the far left edge, because that fence is so close. That's his only option. You ride too close to that fence, you're going to have an accident. And he's a young buck. I'm an old man, but he's a young buck. I would ride the same. More fence right up against. As we continue down, there's been very few sections that have been not right butting up against the sidewalk. Excuse me. A little bit unlevel spots in this area. Not too bad, but if they were fixed, that would be great. More fence. And as we're approaching up here, this is where the grade, I know there was a temporary fix up here as we're around the corner with Fort Jesse, but the permanent fix needs to be done, because it's still, Wayne Aldridge can attest. I know I've had some communication with him that it's still in pretty bad shape. But before we approach that, Let's look at this. There's almost no way you can ride on the sidewalk at all. It's hard to walk on the sidewalk with the brush, the bushes that have been placed here and not trimmed. I can stay on the sidewalk. I am brushing up against these bushes on occasion. More mud where the drainage doesn't work. Again, that has been cleaned up previously this year, but just comes right back. I think this fence was blown down during the Duraco or whatever, however you pronounce that. It was fixed, but again, it's right up against, this is nearly a new fence. There's another section down here is put up right against the abutment of the sidewalk, making this 4-foot sidewalk effectively probably 3 foot wide or less, depending on what's growing on this side of the fence. This area is the one that there was some attempt, thankfully, to make this, address this, because this was just a mud hole. It was as the full width from where the bottom of my camera is to the end up here, and I can show you there's some scrape marks where the equipment was, that it was just completely mud filled. And thanks for cleaning that up, but it needs to be addressed because everything from this hill just slides down here. If this area on the right is not properly graded, it's going to flow back into here again. And these are those scrape marks. So this is where we starts uphill and starts to be not a problem here. So I'm going to send this in for you guys to review, but as you do your budgets, make sure that this section of Fort Jesse, or at least the worst sections, get some budgetary concern, and hopefully some of that can be addressed in the next fiscal year, and prioritize it well over some of the other money that has been spent in the past foolishly, so that we can have a little better public works, a little better sidewalk, at least in this area, for people to ride their bikes and or drive on, or walk on, excuse me. Thank you.